Discover how a simple text to a billionaire miraculously transformed a single mother's life in 3. Sarah's fingers trembled over her phone, torn between fatigue and desperation. The weight of her day settled heavily on her shoulders. An overworked clinic where she had fought against time for too many patients, and later, evening shifts at the diner, where she'd kissed her children goodnight and promised tomorrow would be better. Now she stared at the screen, a single name glowing in the darkness: James Whitmore. Once, he had been just an impressive figure at a conference. Today, he felt like the last flicker of hope in her dim reality. The impulse to reach out surged through her, driven by a riveting mixture of pride and vulnerability. "I'm not asking for help," she typed shakily, "but guidance. How do you keep going when it feels like the odds are stacked against you?" Each word felt like a weight lifting, yet also like a confession of weakness, something she was not accustomed to. The vulnerability clawed at her stomach. Inside, she wrestled with the shame of reaching out. Was she failing her children by admitting that she needed someone else's hand? Each of their bright eyes shone with their dreams, untainted by the burdens of life she struggled beneath. They needed a mother who was whole, not fragmented. And yet, there she stood, exhausted, drained, grappling with the pressure to be everything at once. If only her late-night shifts could bear fruit. If only Nurse Sarah had some spark of rescue within her grasp. Almost immediately, her phone buzzed with a reply. Heart racing, she read, "We all face struggles. I'm here to discuss. Let's meet this week." A startling warmth flooded her. Suddenly, this stranger felt less like a millionaire and more like an ally. But it wasn't long before shadows crept in. What if this connection came with strings attached, or worse, complicated her already precarious existence? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As weeks went by, the semblance of a friendship grew between them. He shared pieces of his past, moments of disappointment, of feeling inadequate despite his success. As they exchanged stories, each revelation made her feel lighter, yet something dark loomed on the horizon. Her daughter had begun showing signs of something far more troubling, her laughter dampened by fragile breathing. The doctors delivered news that felt like shards of glass slicing through her heart. A rare illness, no quick fixes, no guarantees. In that moment of anguish, the thought of reaching out to James twisted within her like a storm. Seeking his help would mean discarding her pride, shattering the very wall she had built to feel secure. But how could she continue alone with her daughter's future teetering on such a delicate edge? The twisted fibers of resilience within her unraveling, Sarah felt a desperate urge to reach out, to voice her uncertainty, to surrender a portion of her independence for her child's health. Yet every second of hesitation chiseled away at her self-image. Each breath grounded her deeper in what felt like insurmountable despair. Now, standing at this precipice, Sarah must navigate a treacherous path between her pride and her dire need. Kids asleep, the night stretched before her, a stillness masking a storm of choices. Would she muster the courage to text him, to allow a glimpse beyond the surface of her life? Or would she remain ensnared in the relentless grip of solitude, sacrificing her daughter's well-being for the sake of her own fragile identity? In the quiet murmur of a night filled with budding possibilities, Sarah's heart raced, poised to send that decisive message, the one that could spin her world in an entirely new direction. The ticking clock mocked Sarah as she wrestled with her decision. The weight of her daughter's illness hung heavily in her mind, each tick amplifying her indecision. She pictured James's warm yet firm presence, the way he nodded encouragingly during their conversations, reminding her that everyone faces their own battles. Listening to him talk about resilience made her realize that vulnerability and strength were often two sides of the same coin. Taking a deep breath, she opened her messaging app again, her heart pounding. "James," she typed, reluctance barely contained in her trembling fingers. "I can't do this alone. My daughter is sick, and I don't know what to do." The words poured out, raw and exposed, and for the first time she felt a small ripple of relief. The silence that followed felt monumental. All her past commitments to self-sufficiency and independence stood in stark contrast to this moment of desperation. Would he see her as a failure? Would he feel overwhelmed and back away? Then her phone buzzed, and she nearly leapt from her chair. A message from James flickered on the screen. "I'm here for you. Let's meet tomorrow, and we can talk about what needs to be done." Sarah smiled through her tears, realizing that her admission had not been the downfall she feared. It was the first step toward taking control. That night, sleep evaded her, leaving her mind racing with the possibilities ahead. She envisioned James helping her finding the right specialists, navigating insurance hurdles, or even connecting her with others who had faced similar challenges. That glimmer of hope ignited a flicker of determination within her. The following day, her heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty, yet buoyed by cautious optimism, Sarah arrived at the cafe they agreed on. It was modest and filled with the rich aroma of roasting coffee. She spotted James at a corner table, his demeanor exuding an ease that had an uncanny ability to soothe the simmering chaos inside her. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat opposite him. "Of course. I can't imagine how difficult this must be for you," he replied. There was no judgment, only understanding in his gaze. They spoke for hours, unveiling layers of each other's lives, shifting from small talk to the stark realities they both faced. She found herself sharing her worries about not only her daughter, but also how her job had become increasingly taxing, leaving her feeling fragmented and hollow. James listened intently, pausing only to share thoughts of his own failures, reminding her of the strength buried deep within herself. Each story they exchanged solidified a shared bond and illuminated connections that had previously seemed insurmountable. Late in their conversation, he leaned forward, the resoluteness in his voice cutting through the heaviness of the moment. "You have the power to navigate this, Sarah. It won't be easy, but you can do it." For the first time, she believed him. This stranger had offered her more than just support. He had imparted a renewed sense of agency. Taking a deep breath, she could feel the boundaries of her self-imposed limitations starting to blur. As they parted ways, the shadow of her daughter's illness still loomed, but a newfound clarity settled in. Sarah now had a plan and a partner in navigating the turbulent waters ahead. But just as determined as she felt, the reality of her situation remained daunting. She wasn't just fighting for her daughter's health. She was standing at the brink of a personal renaissance, ready to reshape her identity from the ashes of her struggles. Yet as she drove home, she couldn't shake the fear that lingered. What if her newfound hope was built on a fragile foundation? The thought knotted in her stomach, leaving her questioning whether she had truly transformed or merely awakened a persistent fear of failure. The next morning, the stakes would rise further. Something unexpected awaited her, a phone call that would test her courage in ways she had never imagined. Would she be ready to face it? As dawn broke, Sarah felt the crisp air through her window, invigorating yet haunting. The phone next to her buzzed again, tearing through the calm and pulling her back to reality. She hesitated, staring at the screen as panic clawed at her insides. It was an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, fearing it was bad news. "Hello?" Her voice wavered. "Is this Sarah?" A deep, authoritative voice inquired. "This is Derek Thompson from the Pediatric Oncology Department. I'm calling regarding your daughter." The world around her shrank, the room shrinking into a dizzying focus on those words. She struggled to breathe, her heart racing with a mixture of hope and dread. "Yes, that's me. What's happened? Is everything okay?" The pause that followed cemented her anxiety. "We have a slot available for a consultation tomorrow. I suggest you and your daughter come in as soon as possible. Considering your situation, we'd like to expedite the process." As the details washed over her, they felt surreal, almost too incredible to grasp. Expedite? What does that mean? Is she getting treatment sooner? The urgency in her tone broke through her carefully curated calm. "Yes, it means we'll prioritize her case. We believe your daughter could benefit from our emerging clinical trials. It's a fast track. We need to discuss options that can potentially improve her condition." With every word, a mix of excitement and terror surged through her veins. Sarah was simultaneously hopeful yet terrified. "How is this possible?" she breathed, her thoughts racing. "The specialist requested a meeting after learning about her prognosis and the challenges you're facing. We believe it may be your only chance." The air seeped from her lungs. A chance. Hope surged like adrenaline. But doubts erupted. What were the risks? What if the trials failed? What if she put her daughter through more pain? The sinkhole of uncertainty threatened to swallow her yet again. "Thank you for the call. I'll be there," she stammered, the resolve battling against an impending wave of fear. As she hung up, the realization settled heavily in her chest alongside a flash of clarity. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Sarah grasped her phone tightly, the newfound urgency igniting a spark within her. But as quickly as hope illuminated her path, shadows crept back in, taunting her with visions of failure and loss. The overwhelming weight of her daughter's health and her own insecurity loomed like a specter. She thought back to her conversation with James, the encouragement still fresh in her mind. "You have the power to navigate this, Sarah." But did she really? The fierce desire to protect her daughter fought against her self-doubt. Each decision felt monumental, a choice fraught with potential agony or joy. She took a moment, steadied her breath, and began to draft a list. Her mind, armed with purpose, started to focus on the specifics she needed to prepare. She would research the clinical trial, gather questions for the doctor, and lean on James for support. After all, he had offered his unwavering support when she needed it most. The hour passed in anxious preparation, thoughts zipping through her mind like electric currents. Doubts ricocheted, juxtaposed with moments of determination that bubbled to the surface. She was on the brink of something important. She could feel it in her bones. As she wrapped up her notes, a sudden realization punched her in the gut. There was still so much unknown. Every decision she made now had a weight beyond her comprehension. What if the trials didn't yield the results she hoped for? What would it mean for her daughter and for her? Resolved to manage the inevitabilities head-on, she looked in the mirror, her reflection revealing a battle-weary woman ready to make that leap of faith. Tomorrow's consultation would not only change her daughter's life, but also determine Sarah's confidence in her role as a mother. However, beyond the immediate action awaited her, lingering just outside her threshold was the realization that she had yet to confront her deepest fears. The stakes were higher than ever, and the minute she stepped into that hospital, a storm awaited her, one that might change her entirely or leave her spiraling into a darker abyss. With her heart pulsating and her spirit steeled, she prepared for the approach of dawn and the confrontation that loomed ahead. Would she be strong enough to face it? The night dragged on, an endless expanse filled with shadows and unspoken fears. Sleep eluded her as thoughts swirled, pulling her deeper into a chasm of uncertainty. Sarah's mind was a battlefield. On one side, her fierce instinct to protect her daughter, and on the other, the crippling fear of making a choice that could alter their lives permanently. As dawn crept in, sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the scattered papers of her plans. With each ray, a sense of urgency transformed into a gripping resolve. She had felt overwhelmed often in the past, but today was different. Today would either assert her strength or expose her vulnerabilities. Before the meeting, Sarah stood in her living room, fixated on her daughter's empty toy box. It seemed so insignificant, and yet it held echoes of laughter, play, and an innocence that now felt fragile. In that space, she met her fear head-on. What if the trials didn't provide the miracle they were hoping for? What if they only brought more pain? The harder she wrestled with those thoughts, the clearer her determination became. "Focus, Sarah," she muttered to herself, pouring a cup of coffee. The scent wrapped around her like a comforting embrace, a splash of normalcy amidst the unfolding chaos. She would arm herself with knowledge, questions, and sheer tenacity. She would leave no stone unturned. If there was hope at the end of this tunnel, she was going to chase it down. Finishing her coffee, she quickly reviewed her list of questions, each one more probing than the last. She wanted to understand everything about the trials, their efficacy, side effects, past results. This wasn't just about her daughter's health. It was about understanding the path ahead, the complexities and expectations that would be part of their new reality. Despite the whirlwind of despair, she suddenly felt a flicker of empowerment. This wasn't a passive struggle. This was a fight, and she was ready to join it. The clinical trials held the possibility of a future she had once feared would drift away. As she envisioned that future, a small smile formed on her lips. Maybe, just maybe, today was the start of a new chapter, not just for her daughter, but for herself as well. James's words echoed again, lifting her spirits. "You have the power to navigate this." Was this the moment she finally started believing it? As the clock ticked closer to their appointment, she felt a rush of adrenaline, an exhilarating cocktail of fear and promise. In a moment of clarity, she realized the meeting would not just be a discussion of methods and statistics. It would be a chance for her to advocate for her daughter, to grapple with powerful medical professionals, not just as an overwhelmed parent, but as a partner in navigating the complexities of cancer treatment. Stepping outside, Sarah felt a warmth on her skin, like the sun's rays were cloaking her worries in gold. She was vulnerable, yes, but vulnerability could coexist with strength. With each step toward the hospital, her pace quickened, driven by purpose rather than fear. She was determined not to leave the fate of her daughter solely in the hands of experts. She would co-create their path. As she approached the hospital's entrance, an unfamiliar sensation gripped her, a blend of trepidation and resolve. The waiting room was filled with parents and children, faces lit with both hope and apprehension. Each person was facing a battle of their own, igniting a sense of shared resilience that she hadn't anticipated. With her heart racing and her spirit ignited, she entered the consultation room, ready to face whatever lay ahead. And as Derek Thompson introduced himself, the words that danced on the edge of her mind crystallized. This was where her journey began, and she would not walk it alone. But just as her resolve solidified, Derek reached for a folder, sliding it across the table with a grave expression. "We need to discuss your daughter's genetic profile before we move forward," he said, his voice low and measured. A cold weight settled in the pit of her stomach as she took in his words. What did that mean for her daughter's future, and what hidden truths did it hold? The gravity of Derek's words hung in the air, suffocating her momentary courage. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the folder, the weight of uncertainty pressing harder against her chest. She inhaled deeply, willing herself to find a foothold amid the turmoil threatening to engulf her. This genetic profile, it could reveal a lot about what we're up against, Derek continued, tapping the folder as if to punctuate his point. His demeanor was calm, but the tension in the room was palpable. Sarah's mind raced. What kind of information was concealed in that document? Would it tell her that there was hope, or that they were facing a battle they had no chance of winning? "Can you explain exactly what you're looking for?" she managed to ask, forcing her voice to remain steady, the question a potential lifeline. Derek nodded, his expression professional yet sympathetic. "We assess genetic mutations that may influence treatment effectiveness. By understanding these alterations, we can tailor the clinical trial more precisely to your daughter's unique situation." Tailor. The word resonated in her, as if they could weave a course of action directly suited to her daughter's needs. "So, you're saying these tests could guide how we fight?" she asked, trying to grasp the complexities of it all. "Yes," he replied, leaning forward slightly, "but there could also be variations in prognosis based on the results. Sometimes the information reveals unexpected challenges." Unexpected challenges. The phrase settled heavily in the air between them, prompting another wave of dread. How could she prepare for the unexpected when those very uncertainties were consuming her? A flicker of defiance sparked within her. She couldn't allow fear to dictate this next step. "I want to know everything," Sarah declared, her voice a firmer echo of her resolve. "I need to know what we're dealing with. No more hiding behind vague terms or uncertainty." Derek's lips curved in acknowledgement, appreciating her directness. "I'll make sure you have all the information we uncover. You deserve clarity, especially in what is at stake." The conversation burrowed deeper into her psyche, revealing porcelain layers to navigate. It wasn't merely her daughter's future on the line. It was her own metamorphosis. She had been wallowing in despair for too long, but now she sensed a shift. Knowledge had power, and she craved that power more than she feared the potential for devastating news. As Derek continued outlining the logistics of the testing and the next steps regarding the clinical trial, Sarah's thoughts raced ahead. What could she learn from this process? There would be intense scrutiny of her daughter's profile, but they would also uncover her as an individual, her strengths, her vulnerabilities, and most importantly, her uniqueness. Once the meeting concluded, Sarah stepped out into the bright daylight, feeling different somehow. The clarity born from confronting the unknown held a mixed promise of urgency and resolve. She would explore the depth of the knowledge she'd gain, not just about her daughter's diagnosis, but about herself in the context of this fight. She returned home and placed the folder on the dining table, feeling it pulse with potential. After a brief moment of contemplation, she opened it, her heart pounding as she studied the contents. Each word was a key, a chance to unlock understanding, an opportunity to fortify her armor. Late into that evening, Sarah worked through the pages, her brows furrowed in concentration as she mapped out possible strategies that began to take shape in her mind. This was no longer just about surviving. It was about seizing control and preparing to engage in the battle ahead with both knowledge and courage. But just as she sought to pen the first conclusion of her own strategy, a paragraph caught her eye, an unexpected warning about genetic anomalies and their possible implications. Shock reverberated through her. This new insight added layers of complexity she wasn't prepared for. As her thoughts spiraled through potential ramifications, she felt a shudder of alarm. Could this lead to something even more dire? The doorbell rang, slicing through her rising anxiety. A sense of foreboding, laced with curiosity, accompanied her as she walked to the door. Who could it be? More surprises? Or perhaps a new challenge waiting for her? She braced herself for whatever awaited her on the other side. As Sarah swung open the door, her breath caught in her throat. Standing on her doorstep was a tall figure, cloaked in darkness, the late evening light looming just behind him. The silhouette seemed to ripple with an air of authority that immediately set her on edge. "Can I help you?" she managed to inquire, her voice steadier than she felt. "Are you Sarah? Sarah Lang?" The stranger stepped closer, revealing sharp features softened only by a hint of concern in his eyes. "Yes, that's me. And you are?" She crossed her arms, the folder still clutched tightly, an unintentional barrier between her and this unexpected visitor. "My name is Eric. I'm with the Beyond Hope Foundation." He took a small step, offering a business card, which she hesitated to take. "I know this is abrupt, but I have important information regarding your daughter's situation." The mention of her daughter sent a jolt through Sarah, igniting both hope and skepticism within her. "What do you mean? How do you know about her?" Eric shuffled his feet, clearly aware of the gravity of the conversation. "We've been tracking cases like your daughter's. You're not alone in this fight. There are resources, people—" His voice trailed off, seeming to weigh every word. "I know it sounds terrifying, but I'm here to help." Sarah's mind whirled. Could this be redirecting her pursuits into yet another uncertainty? She thought about Derek's words, the firm stand she had taken in leaning into the complexity. This stranger, however, felt like an intrusion, a riddle she wasn't prepared to solve. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, feeling the weight of her protective instincts rise up. "Because I've been through this. My sister fought cancer for 2 years. I watched helplessly as we exhausted every option, until we nearly lost hope," he admitted, vulnerability cracking through his professional veneer. "I learned about the breakthroughs, the trials that could change everything. I found the courage to challenge the unknown. You can too." His earnestness cut through her defenses, allowing a sliver of vulnerability to seep into her. "What do you know? What have you found?" Rather than answering outright, he stepped inside, allowing the already cramped space of her home to close around them, almost suffocating. "We have contacts with genetic researchers working on cutting-edge treatments. Together, we could explore avenues you might not have considered," he said as he surveyed the dining table laden with information, his eyes fixating on the folder she still clutched. Suddenly, the potential for collaboration felt almost overwhelming. Could she simultaneously learn more about her daughter's genetic profile and the new possibilities Eric claimed? But what could it mean to entrust her journey to someone else, to rely on a foundation? With a rush of determination, Sarah straightened her posture. "I need more information before I can even consider this. I can't afford to lose time or further complicate an already tangled situation." Eric nodded, the flicker of respect in his eyes not lost on her. "Of course, I understand your hesitancy after everything you've been through. Let's dig deeper, tackle the risks together. Knowledge is invaluable, as you've rightly said." As they began to share insights, a sense of urgency pulsed in the room. Time felt like both an ally and an adversary. They delved deep into healthcare networks, trial timelines, while Eric disclosed his personal experiences, which resonated with her struggle. But as Sarah unraveled a promising lead about an innovative treatment, her phone buzzed violently on the table. A text alert flashed across the screen from Derek, an urgent update regarding her daughter's genetic testing results. Her heart raced. Was this the confirmation of the fears she dared not reconsider? Ignoring the horizon of possibilities, she reached for her phone, even as Eric continued to speak, his words swirling into static background noise. The moment of decision loomed larger than life, filling her with adrenaline and anxiety. Underneath it all, she felt the tangible pressure of destiny. She realized her next choice could lead her to a pivotal juncture, one that held both risk and potential. Would she choose to continue on her current path, armed with newfound knowledge, or engage with Eric and the unknowns of the Foundation? Each option flickered in her mind like stars vying for attention in the night sky. And just as she resolved to choose, another notification popped up on her phone. A name she had hoped she'd never see again. The time had come to face the ghosts of her past. The name loomed on her screen, a jarring reminder of a past she had tried to bury. Mark Reynolds, a man she hadn't spoken to in years, a man who had once been a linchpin in her life and at one point promised the world. Yet now the thought of his name twisted uneasily in her stomach. Hadn't she resolved to escape that chapter? But the buzz of her phone held a magnetic pull, yanking her back toward a discussion she had long since buried. "Sarah, are you listening?" Eric's voice pierced through the fog of her thoughts. She blinked, refocusing her gaze on him, who stood several paces away, kneading his hands nervously. The urgency of their conversation settled back into the forefront of her mind, but a growing tide of anxiety swirled beneath, leaving her fragmented. "Sorry, yes, you were saying something about genetic trials?" "Right," he replied, his brow knitting slightly. "We can initiate connections with researchers who have promising breakthroughs. They're looking for patients willing to test new treatments, and your daughter's profile could fit into one of these avenues." Something in his earnest expression rekindled her resolve. She leaned closer, dismissing the looming shadows of her past for the moment, treating Eric's words as a life raft in turbulent waters. Adrian's future hinged on exploration and a willingness to take risks. "What's the next step, then?" Sarah asked, forcing herself to maintain focus. The urgency of Eric's mission matched the wildfire of her thoughts. Perhaps leaning into the complexity did not have to be done alone. Eric began outlining potential contacts, shares of information whispering hope through each sentence he spoke. He spoke about upcoming meetings and how they could facilitate introductions, starting a plan she had only dreamed of until now. Each suggestion resonated with her, possibility tangled with caution, the promise of healing interwoven with uncertainty. But as she pulled herself deeper into this emerging journey, a new text notification broke through her concentration. It drew her attention firmly back to the screen, a message from Mark. Her breath hitched. Would this be a cruel reminder of everything she had fought against? "Sarah?" Eric prompted. "Just a moment." Her thumb hovered over the phone, and she felt the weight of a deliberate choice forming. To look away would be to reject a past connection, to cut ties rather than address them head-on. But to engage could mean revisiting vulnerabilities she had worked so hard to suppress. With a deep breath, she opened the message, trying to brace for its impact. "We need to talk. It's important. Call me." A simple request, yet it resonated thunderously in her mind. Could this be what she needed to truly confront her past? Or was it more evidence that shadows chased her? Either way, this was now entangled with her lower-stakes decision-making process. Eric continued discussing the intricacies of genetic medicine, yet the distraction of Mark's message clung stubbornly to her thoughts. "Sarah, it's a pivotal moment. Our next steps could change everything for your daughter," Eric coaxed, trying to keep her engaged. Yet, in that moment, Sarah felt equally divided between the present urgency of her daughter's health and the haunting echoes of old promises. Brushing a hand through her hair, she contemplated her standing dilemma. Should she call Mark and probe his intentions, possibly risking the exhilarating new alliance with Eric? Or should she commit wholeheartedly to the present path, believing in the potential of the foundation and the healing it offered? "Eric," she spoke finally, a determined tone edge framing her voice. "I need a moment. There's something I need to address first, something that might bring clarity." As she made her choice to prioritize her next step, the doorway had opened wider than she had imagined. Steeling herself for the conversation ahead, she knew whatever path she'd choose would undeniably adjust the course of her life, both present and future. But the consequences of confronting that past would be nothing compared to what it would take to wrest her daughter's future from uncertainty. The time had come not just to face her ghosts, but to define what she would confront next. What awaited on the other side of that haunted connection? Sarah's heart raced as she stood at the crossroads of past and present. The stark reality of her situation settled in like the coolness of twilight. She could almost hear the ticking of a clock, marking the seconds lost in indecision. The luminescent screen of her phone flickered like a beacon, drawing her in, daring her to confront what she had been avoiding for so long. It felt like a plunge into icy water, both terrifying and invigorating. "Do I really want to do this?" she muttered under her breath, biting down on the inside of her cheek, the familiar taste of anxiety surging through her. She had built walls around her life, solid and high, but it was time to decide whether those walls served her or confined her. Mark's message was not just a ghost from her past, it was an opportunity, a chance to redefine herself away from the weight of who she had been with him. With a steadying breath, she chose to step back from Eric's conversation and focus on her own path. She had invested so much in getting to this point, in fighting for her daughter. Yet the pull of unresolved feelings tugged at her ambition. If she engaged with Mark, she could either find closure or uncover possibilities she had dismissed. What if he could help? But as she contemplated this leap, Sarah's mind flickered to her daughter. Adrian's condition demanded her undivided attention. Every moment spent dwelling on memories of Mark displaced time that could be poured into finding solutions for her daughter's health struggles. Still, she considered her own growth amidst all the chaos. "Sarah?" Eric's voice cut through her thoughts once more. His tone was an anchor, reminding her that she had critical decisions to make and futures to shape. "Are you okay?" "I need to manage a personal matter first," she replied, the words tumbling out firmly despite the tremors in her hands. "Understood. Just remember, time is a factor here. Let's make sure we don't lose our momentum." Finding strength in his words, she nodded and tuned him out gently, redirecting her focus to the conversation that awaited her. She pressed the call button, the weight of anticipation settling on her chest like a heavy quilt. "Sarah," Mark's voice crackled through the line, laced with an urgency that startled her. "I'm glad you called. I need to explain." She swallowed hard. "What's going on?" "Things have changed," he said, his tone shifting, inflected with something she couldn't quite grasp. "I've been trying to reach you because I want to help. I know I hurt you before. I never meant to, but I've had time to think." She felt anger flare, a protective instinct for all the pain she had endured in silence. "You had your chance, and you walked away. You can't just show up now and think you can change everything." "Please, let me explain. If it helps, I can't stop thinking about your daughter. I know I might not have the right to ask, but I want to be part of this, to help, if you'd let me." His mention of Adrian struck a chord deep within her, each word igniting conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to slam the door shut on years of speculation and heartache, devoting herself solely to a life without him. Yet the faint whisper of coincidence encouraged her to explore this twisted turn of fate. "Mark, she hesitated, knowing that the stakes were higher than just her understanding of their history. "If you want to help my daughter, prove it. I need tangible support, not just promises." "Agreed. Let's meet. I can show you the plans I've developed," he said, the tension palpable in his voice. "It's important, Sarah, for both of us." Her thoughts raced. Mark's proposal offered trepidation and tangible possibilities. As she weighed the help against the hurt, she realized this meeting could create ripples in both their lives. But was she willing to let him, or anyone for that matter, back into her world? With mounting conviction, she slowly replied, "Fine, let's meet, but understand, I won't tolerate any more empty gestures." As the call ended, something began to shift within her. Will this confrontation with her past offer her and Adrian a new path forward, or was she opening a floodgate that would engulf her? The tension between expectation and fear mirrored her life's turmoil. Stepping into the unknown could redefine everything she stood for. As Sarah walked back to where Eric waited, she steeled herself for the unavoidable conversation they were about to have. Which path would she choose? One of potential healing, or a tangled web of past emotions? In that moment, she understood. Confronting the past was the only way to forge a hopeful future. But what would unfold when she came eye to eye with the man she had tried so hard to forget? The next morning dawned bright and clear, illuminating the tangled web of thoughts spinning in Sarah's mind. The weight of her decision felt both exhilarating and suffocating. As she got dressed, preparing for her meeting with Mark, she paused in front of the mirror. She scrutinized her reflection, noting the subtle lines etched by worry and the shadows cast by sleepless nights. This was not merely about Mark. It was a pivotal moment of potential change in her life, one that could alter the trajectory of her and Adrian's future. Her hands were steady, yet her heart raced as she picked up her bag and set out. Each step seemed to echo uncertainty. Could she truly allow someone back into her delicate world, especially someone who had the power to disrupt everything she struggled to hold together? Approaching the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with her mounting anticipation. Finding a corner table, she sat with her thoughts, mapping out her expectations. She needed to clarify where she stood and what she was prepared to do. She wasn't just a mother, she was a warrior in her fight for Adrian. As the door swung open, revealing Mark, a rush of conflicting emotions flooded her. He looked different, older, perhaps, yet the charm she remembered still sparkled in his eyes. He approached her with a tentative smile, and for a split second her defenses weakened. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, settling into the chair across from her. She measured her response, keeping her voice steady. "Let's get to the point. You wanted to show me something. What is it?" He hesitated for a moment, crossing his hands as if collecting his thoughts. "I've done a lot of research on treatments for Adrian. I've connected with specialists, and I believe there are some promising avenues we can explore." As he spoke, Sarah felt a flicker of skepticism. It wasn't just his words that made her wary. It was the very essence of their history. Promises often turned into disappointment. "And why should I believe you? Your past track record isn't exactly one to inspire trust." "Because I've changed," Mark replied, his intensity rising. "I've spent the last few years reflecting on my mistakes, and I can't help but think about how my choices affected both of you." She studied him, searching for truth amidst the foreign familiarity. "What is it you expect from all this? Why involve yourself now?" "I want to contribute," he said, his voice earnest but edged with a hint of desperation. "I can't erase the past, but maybe I can help shape a better future for both of you." The honesty in his tone pierced through her skepticism. Yet self-preservation instinctively kicked in. This could end poorly, as it had in the past. But as a mother, the idea of an opportunity for Adrian's well-being began to weave itself into her fabric of thought. "I need to know more. Show me the specifics of what you're proposing," she challenged, yielding the slightest inch. Mark pulled out a folder, neatly organized, filled with printed papers of research and contact lists. "Here, I've reached out to top specialists and gathered resource information. I want to be hands-on, assisting you in any way possible." Fingers trembling slightly, she took the folder and flipped through the contents. Each page contained a world of possibility, mingling excitement with caution. The idea of Mark being part of their lives again, though unsettling, held the promise of a shift in her, in their narrative. But every promise held risks. Could she trust him not to abandon them again? As she set the folder down, Mark's gaze was unwavering. "Sarah, I know I can't scan away the past, but I'm ready to help build the future." Nodding slowly, a cacophony of conflicting sentiments surged within her. Should she allow the past to dictate the present, or might an alliance with Mark offer the hope they desperately needed? The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her heart. Stepping into this realm risked more than just pain. It meant opening a door she had long kept bolted. With resolve, she raised her eyes, locking onto his. "We'll go forward, but I need you to understand something vital. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Adrian. Mark leaned back, a flicker of understanding passing between them. And that's where we start. As she left the coffee shop, the clarity of her intentions washed over her. They had embarked on a pact that could redefine her existence, capable of unraveling both bonds and burdens. She had to navigate this path wisely, for the stakes couldn't be higher. But as she stepped out into the bustling city street, a nagging doubt curled at the edges of her consciousness. What if the past was a shadow that couldn't be outrun? That thought hung heavily as she headed home, the pulse of possibility reverberating beneath her skin. Would this collaboration be a stepping stone toward redemption, or yet another misstep in her complex journey? The answers began to swirl, teasingly out of reach, as she mentally prepared for the next confrontation, one with herself. Days rolled by in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Sarah found herself immersed in a world she never expected. Each appointment with specialists pulled her deeper into the medical labyrinth, overwhelming yet illuminating. Her focus sharpened on each word they offered about Adrian's condition, transforming her whirlwind of anxiety into a cerebral determination, the kind bred from necessity. With Mark's support, they dove into research together. Together, they combed through studies about genetic treatments, piecing together a plan that felt tantalizingly within reach. Slowly, the fog of her old life began to lift, revealing a newfound clarity. She was not merely existing in survival mode, she was crafting a strategy rooted in hope. Walking into the oncology center one afternoon, Sarah felt a mix of resolve and apprehension. They had a meeting to discuss Adrian's potential enrollment in a clinical trial. For the first time, she stepped into the room not just as a desperate mother, but a knowledgeable advocate. Every question she prepared echoed with newfound authority, a testament to her research and collaboration with Mark. As they sat across from Dr. Thompson, a leading specialist in pediatric oncology, Sarah unlashed a barrage of well-researched inquiries. Each question pierced the atmosphere with confidence, a stark contrast from the trepidation she had experienced months ago. "Can you describe the anticipated outcomes of the trial?" she asked, her voice steady and unwavering. As Dr. Thompson outlined the protocol, Sarah felt the tangible threads of hope weaving into the frayed tapestry of her life. They discussed Adrian's eligibility, possible risks, and the outlook for success. Her insistence on clarity finally paying off. She grasped the complexity of it all, not simply as a mother, but as a partner in her daughter's health care. After the meeting concluded, Sarah stepped outside, the sunlight flooding her senses. An exhilarating sense of accomplishment washed over her. She had conquered a pivotal hurdle and established herself as an informed participant. Reflecting on the past weeks, she realized just how far she had come. A stark contrast emerged as she thought back to when she first reached out to James. Fear had gripped her then, but now assertiveness and confidence pulsated through her. Sarah had transformed from a reluctant seeker of help to a formidable ally in her daughter's fight. Yet the journey was far from over. The days that followed bristled with challenges. Adrian's strength fluctuated, and each visit to the oncology department set nerves ablaze. But Sarah held tightly to the lessons she had learned, both from her situations and the people who had stepped into her life. Mark remained steadfast, consistently proactive. They communicated regularly, confirming research, discussing treatment options, and crafting layers of cautious optimism. The bond fostered by their collaboration shifted from remnants of their past to a partnership rooted in mutual support. One evening, as Sarah and Mark sat working on their next steps, a sense of ease enveloped them. As they juggled logistical matters, he paused and glanced at her thoughtfully. "You've really come into your own in this journey, Sarah. It's inspiring." She felt a swell of pride, a recognition of her growth. "I had to. It wasn't a choice. My daughter's life is at stake." In that moment, she realized just how much her prospects had shifted. Not only was she learning to be a fierce advocate for Adrian, but she was also becoming a person who willingly leaned on those capable of supporting her. She understood that asking for help didn't equate to weakness, but was a testament to her resilience. Weeks later, during Adrian's treatment, Sarah stood beside her daughter, wearing a proud smile. Watching her little girl engage with other patients, she felt exhilaration ripple through her. She was no longer that fragmented woman hiding behind a facade. As the trial progressed and results became apparent, Sarah witnessed tangible shifts in Adrian's condition. Their journey wasn't just revitalizing her daughter, but also bolstering Sarah's spirit. She was standing tall, recognized by the specialists as a competent participant with a voice that mattered. When the results of the trial eventually came back, they surpassed expectations, illuminating their path forward. Relief and joy enveloped her like a warm embrace as she considered the hurdles they had overcome together. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, Sarah stood in her yard, breathing in the fresh air. She marveled at how far she had come. The dark shadows of helplessness had been replaced by a strong sense of self. Not only had she learned to navigate the complex medical landscape, but she had also reshaped her identity in the process. Mark approached her with a smile, shaking her from her reverie. "We did it, Sarah. We're now on a path to something better for Adrian." "Yes, we did," she echoed, a gentle laugh escaping her lips. "I've realized it's not just about the outcome, but about who we become along the way." Empowered by the journey, Sarah grasped the profound realization that she hadn't just achieved a victory. She had transformed from a panting survivor into a confident advocate. With a sense of solid confidence emanating from within, she watched as her daughter played, fulfilling each mother's dream of a brighter tomorrow. As a final act of recognition, she reached for her phone, intending to text James and share the triumph, but paused. The realization struck her. It was time to step forward not only into new opportunities, but also into a space of gratitude where past connections could forge a renewed understanding. Her transformation was complete, and as she sent out messages of her journey, Sarah felt an unyielding sense of fulfillment. She had achieved not just a personal triumph, but a legacy of resilience for her daughter, a potent reminder that each obstacle could be redefined as a stepping stone on the path of life. She had conquered doubt and unearthed a version of herself that shone brightly, carrying an undeniable strength she would never again take for granted. Today, she was not just a survivor, she was a warrior, armed with knowledge, purpose, and a renewed promise for her future. And in the intimacy of that moment, Sarah knew, vividly aware of the urgent shift her life had taken, that she would face whatever challenges lay ahead as the courageous architect of her own story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.